No one told Tessa Monroe the forbidden patient was dying 3 doors away. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below, and if you believe in courage and destiny, hit like and subscribe. These stories remind us love finds the broken. Now, back to Tessa. There is one patient in this infirmary you are never to touch without direct authorization, Doctor. Evelyn Ward said it without looking up from the chart in her hands. Tessa had been inside the Royal Moon Infirmary for less than 10 minutes, and already she felt as if she had stepped into a world built to remind her where an Omega belonged. The great stone building smelled of clean linen, bitter herbs, and rain drifting through the cracked windows. Healers in dark blue coats crossed the central hall with quick practice steps. Most wore Alpha or Beta insignia. Tessa's small silver Omega badge seemed almost painfully bright against her plain gray uniform. She tightened her fingers around the strap of her medical satchel. "Which patient?" she asked. Evelyn finally looked at her. Her expression was not cruel. Somehow, that made it worse. It was the look of someone who had already decided Tessa's limits. The restricted patient. "You will not examine him. You will not administer medication. You will not enter his room unless I tell you personally." Tessa drew a careful breath. "I understand. But which room is—" The front door slammed open. Boots struck stone. Royal guards swept into the infirmary, their black coats wet from the storm outside. Between them came a rolling medical bed, carrying a man Tessa could barely see beneath blankets and hurriedly wrapped bandages. Every healer in the hall stopped. Captain Mason Reed appeared beside the bed. "Dr. Ward." Now Evelyn turned immediately. "East Ward," she told Tessa. "Change dressings, check temperatures, do nothing beyond your assignment." Then she was gone. Tessa stood there for half a second, watching the guards disappear toward the northern corridor. The man on the bed had no visible crest. No name had been called. No chart had been handed to her. She still did not know which patient she was forbidden to touch. A Beta healer passed behind her. First night he asked, "Is it that obvious?" "You are still standing still." He kept walking. Tessa swallowed her answer and headed toward East Ward. For the next few hours, she did exactly what she had been told. She changed bandages, checked fevers, refilled water. When an elderly patient complained that his shoulder felt strangely cold despite a normal temperature, Tessa rested 2 fingers against his wrist and felt the faint pulse of distress underneath his calm heartbeat. "Your wrap is too tight," she said. The supervising healer frowned. It was applied correctly. Tessa loosened it anyway. Color slowly returned to the man's hand. The supervisor said nothing after that. Near 11, the infirmary finally quieted. Rain whispered against the windows. Tessa was replacing clean gauze in her satchel when a bell rang somewhere beyond the central hall. Once, sharp, urgent. She looked up. No one moved. The bell rang again. Tessa stepped into the corridor. "Is someone going to answer that?" A passing attendant shook her head. "North side, not ours." The words made Tessa stop. North side, the restricted wing. She remembered Evelyn's warning. Do not enter his room. Except Evelyn had never told her which room was his. The bell rang a 3rd time. Weaker now. Tessa stared down the empty hallway. One thought told her to stay exactly where she was. Another reminded her what an unanswered emergency bell meant. Someone needed help. She ran. Her shoes struck the stone as she passed the central treatment hall and reached the northern corridor. 3 doors faced her. 2 stood open and empty. The 3rd was nearly closed. A brass plate beside it read only N3. No patient name. No warning. No guard. Tessa pushed the door open. A tall man lay on the bed beneath the pale moon lamp, his dark hair damp against his forehead. One hand gripped the blanket. His breathing came shallow and uneven. Beside him, an amber medicine vial rested on a silver assay tray. No healer was present. Tessa crossed the room before fear could argue with training. "Sir, can you hear me?" His eyes opened, silver gray, sharp even through exhaustion. They fixed on her face, and for one strange second, Tessa had the unmistakable feeling that he was more alarmed to see her than she was to see him. "You should not be here," he said. Tessa touched 2 fingers to his wrist. His pulse was dangerously uneven. Under his skin, faint dark lines had begun spreading toward his forearm. Her stomach tightened. "Neither should you," she said quietly, opening her satchel. "If everyone is going to leave you here without a healer—" His fingers closed around her wrist before she could reach the bandage. Not hard, just enough to stop her. "Omega," his voice dropped. "Do you know who I am?" Tessa met his eyes. "No." His grip loosened. Something unreadable passed across his face. "Then you really should leave." Tessa looked at the darkening veins beneath his skin, then at the empty doorway behind her. She pulled on her healer gloves. "You can explain why after I keep you alive, and without knowing his name, his rank, or why every other healer had been ordered to stay away." Tessa Monroe began treating the Alpha King first. Tessa kept her fingers on the stranger's wrist until the uneven rhythm beneath his skin became clear. Too fast, then too slow, then fast again. It was not the pulse of a man simply weakened by a wound. Something else was pushing his body out of balance. "How long have you felt like this?" she asked. He watched her with the wary stillness of someone more accustomed to giving orders than answering questions. "Long enough." "That is not a medical answer." A faint crease appeared between his brows. Tessa ignored it and reached for the bandage near his side. The outer wrap was clean, but the skin above it carried thin black violet lines that should not have been there. They curved beneath the surface like ink caught under glass. Her training returned all at once. Silver exposure caused fever, tremors, instinctive aggression. Severe cases could force a wolf into an uncontrolled shift, but this pattern was wrong. Too concentrated, too deliberate. Tessa leaned closer without touching the darkened area. "You were poisoned." His expression did not change. That told her more than surprise would have. "You already knew." "I knew something was used during the attack." His voice remained low. "Controlled. I did not know what." Tessa glanced at the amber vial resting beside the bed. "What have they given you?" "Whatever your people decided would keep me alive." "Your people?" The phrase sounded strange coming from a patient in a royal infirmary, but she had no time to examine it. She lifted the vial. Clear amber liquid moved inside. At first glance, it looked ordinary. Then she noticed the smell. Bitter herbs, yes. Silverroot, perhaps. But underneath it was something metallic and sharp enough to make the back of her throat tighten. Tessa carried the vial to the small silver assay plate on the side table. "What are you doing?" "Checking whether I trust this." "You do not trust your own infirmary?" "Tonight is my first night here." "I barely trust the hallway." That almost pulled a smile from him. Almost. Tessa placed one small drop on the silver plate. Nothing happened immediately. She waited. The liquid remained amber, but a faint gray shadow began forming along its edge. Her pulse quickened. It was not enough to prove contamination, not yet. She needed Evelyn or the apothecary to confirm it. Still, every instinct told her not to give him another dose. "Did they give you this before you became worse?" she asked. "Yes." "How long after?" "Minutes." Tessa set the vial down carefully. "Then nobody gives you more until I know what is in it." His eyes sharpened. "You are very comfortable issuing orders for someone who does not know my name." "I know your pulse." "For now, that is enough." She returned to the bedside and checked the bandage. The original injury itself was stable. Whoever had treated it had done competent work. That made the spreading symptoms even more troubling. Tessa placed 2 fingers near his wrist again and let her attention settle beneath the surface. Resonance never arrived like a voice. It came as pressure, heat, a pull inside her own nerves that pointed toward distress in another body. At first she felt the wound near his ribs, deep, steady, manageable. Then something stronger struck behind it, burning pressure moving through his bloodstream, and beneath that, another force, wild, frightened, furious because it was hurting. Tessa pulled her hand back. The stranger noticed. "What, your wolf?" His jaw tightened. "What about it?" "It is not fighting you." The dark veins had crept farther toward his elbow. "It is reacting to the poison." His breathing changed. 1 measured inhale became 2. His fingers curled against the blanket. Tessa saw the nails begin to lengthen by the smallest amount. "You need to stay calm. That will not stop it. It might slow it. You should leave. You already tried that." His eyes flashed gold for half a second before returning to silver gray. This time, when he spoke, the control in his voice sounded thinner. "When my wolf wakes, you will not have time to run." Tessa looked toward the open doorway. Still no healer, no guard, no footsteps. Then she looked back at the vial, at the gray ring spreading slowly across the silver plate, and at the patient everyone had warned her not to touch without ever telling her who he was. Something was deeply wrong here. Before she could call for help, his entire body went rigid. The emergency bell began ringing again, and a low warning sound rose from somewhere far deeper than his throat. The warning sound had barely left the stranger's throat when footsteps thundered down the northern corridor. Tessa stepped back from the bed. But she did not leave. The emergency bell kept ringing above the door. The man's breathing had grown rougher, and the dark lines beneath his skin were spreading toward his elbow. Then Dr. Evelyn Ward rushed into the room with Captain Mason Reed and 2 senior healers behind her. Evelyn stopped so suddenly that the others nearly ran into her. Her eyes went from Tessa to the patient to the amber vial resting beside the silver assay plate. "What are you doing in here?" she demanded. Tessa opened her mouth, but Evelyn's face had already changed. Not anger now, alarm. "This is him," Tessa said quietly. "The restricted patient." Evelyn stared at her. "I told you not to touch him." "You never told me which patient he was." For half a second, nobody answered. Tessa saw the truth land in Evelyn's expression. The interrupted briefing, the convoy, the missing room number. But Evelyn recovered quickly. "Step away from the bed." His condition became worse after the last dose. "Step away." "Tessa, the medicine may be contaminated." One of the senior healers gave her a sharp look. "That is a serious claim." "It is an observation. The assay plate reacted." Evelyn glanced toward the tray. The faint discoloration was still visible around the drop. Before she could examine it, the man on the bed drew in a sudden breath. His eyes flashed gold. Captain Mason moved closer, but he did not touch him. "Sir," Mason said carefully, "stay with us." Tessa noticed the word immediately. "Sir," not patient, not stranger. There was respect in Mason's voice. More than respect. Habit. Evelyn turned to the senior healers. "Begin stabilization." They moved to opposite sides of the bed and raised their hands near the man's shoulders. Tessa felt the pressure in the room before they even began. Alpha dominance, controlled, focused. Designed to force a distressed wolf back beneath the surface. The stranger's jaw tightened. His fingers curled against the blanket. The dark veins became more visible. "Stop," Tessa said. Nobody listened. The healers increased the pressure. The man's breathing shortened. His wolf pushed harder. Tessa could almost feel the distress from several feet away. Not rage, pain. "You are making it worse!" Evelyn snapped her head toward her. "You are an apprentice, and he is getting worse. Take her outside." One of the attendants reached for Tessa's arm. She pulled back. "His wolf is not resisting treatment because it is aggressive. It is reacting because the treatment hurts." "Enough!" Evelyn pointed toward the door. "You have already exceeded every boundary of your position tonight." Tessa looked at the man. His silver-gray eyes had nearly disappeared beneath the gold. For 1 second, they met hers. There was awareness there. Barely, but enough. The attendant gently took her by both arms and guided her backward. Tessa did not fight. She only kept watching the patient. Then his voice cut through the room. "Release her." Everyone froze, even Evelyn. Captain Mason turned toward the bed. The stranger slowly opened his eyes again. The gold was still there, but his voice carried a calm authority that did not match the weakened man Tessa had found less than an hour earlier. "She stays." The attendant released Tessa immediately. No question, no hesitation. Tessa stared at Mason. He had obeyed before Evelyn even reacted. A captain of the Royal Guard had just taken an order from a nameless patient in a locked infirmary room. Evelyn looked as if she wanted to argue, but she did not. "Very well," she said. "She stays back." One of the senior healers reached for the stabilization controls again. Tessa saw the patient tense before the pressure even touched him. "Do not," she said. Evelyn's patience broke. "Then what exactly do you suggest?" Tessa looked at the man on the bed, at the fear hidden beneath his control, at the wolf fighting pain that everyone else kept treating like disobedience. She finally understood what they were missing. Stop trying to overpower him. Silence. Behind them, near the medicine tray, Nolan Price entered without drawing attention. His gaze dropped to the amber vial, while every eye remained fixed on Tessa. His hand closed around it and slipped it quietly into his coat. Tessa did not see him. She was already moving toward the bed. The stranger watched her approach, his breathing uneven, his eyes turning gold again. "Tessa," Evelyn warned. Tessa stopped 1 step away from him. She was frightened now, truly frightened, but she also knew exactly what she needed him to do next. She held his gaze and said, "Look at me." Tessa held the stranger's gaze. "Look at me. Not them. Me." His breathing came unevenly, each breath tighter than the one before it, but his silver-gray eyes found hers through the gold beginning to cloud them. Around the bed, no one moved. Evelyn stood rigid beside the senior healers. Captain Mason watched from the foot of the bed, ready to intervene if the patient lost control. Tessa could feel their doubt pressing against her almost as strongly as the alpha presence filling the room. She ignored all of it. "I am going to touch your hand," she said softly. "Do not fight what you feel. Let me find where the pain is coming from." The stranger managed a strained reply. "You do not know what you are asking." "Then help me understand." She placed her palm against his wrist. Pain resonance struck instantly. Heat rushed through her nerves, followed by a deep pressure that stole half a breath from her lungs. Tessa nearly pulled away. She had used her gift on fevers, broken bones, frightened children, even injured wolves back in Willow Creek. Nothing had ever felt like this. His body carried several layers of distress at once. The wound near his ribs pulsed with a steady ache, but it was not killing him. The poison was different. It moved like fire beneath cold skin, disrupting his heartbeat and forcing his wolf into panic. Beneath that panic was something even more powerful. Instinct. The wolf was trying to protect him from a threat it could not understand. Every wave of dominance from the senior healers had only convinced it that the danger was getting closer. Tessa opened her eyes. They were treating your wolf like an enemy, she whispered. His gaze sharpened, as if some part of him understood exactly what she meant. Evelyn stepped forward. Tessa, your pulse is rising. Break contact. Not yet. That is an order. Tessa barely heard her. The pain was flowing through the connection now. Not the poison itself, she knew the difference. Her gift could not remove Silver Nightshade from his blood, but it could help his body stop fighting itself long enough for proper medicine to work. That was all she needed. One quiet window, one chance. She shifted her grip and placed her other hand lightly against the center of his chest. Listen to my breathing, she told him. Slow yours down with mine. He gave her a look that almost said the idea was ridiculous. Then another wave of pain tightened his face. Tessa inhaled slowly. One breath. He followed, barely. Again. The gold in his eyes flickered, his fingers relaxed by a fraction. Tessa felt the wolf's panic change. Not disappear. Listen. The difference was small, but real. That is it, she murmured. Nobody is trying to control you now. The pressure inside her own chest increased. Her fingertips began to tremble. A dark mark appeared beneath the skin near her wrist, thin as a pencil line. Evelyn saw it. Break contact now. Mason moved closer. Healer Monroe. Tessa shook her head once. His heartbeat is stabilizing. The stranger heard that. Even through the haze, his attention dropped to the dark mark spreading along Tessa's wrist. Something changed in his face. Concern. Stop, he said. It was the first command he had given her that sounded less like authority and more like fear. Tessa managed a small smile. Not until you are breathing normally. You are hurting yourself, I know. Then stop. You first. For the first time, the corner of his mouth almost moved. Then his next breath came easier. The one after that did too. His pulse steadied beneath her palm. The gold slowly retreated from his eyes until silver gray returned. Around them, the oppressive tension in the room faded. One of the senior healers stared at the monitors, then at Tessa. His rhythm is holding. Evelyn said nothing. Tessa finally released the connection. The room tilted. She tried to step back, but her knees felt strangely distant. Mason reached toward her, yet someone moved faster. The patient rose just enough to catch Tessa before she reached the floor. She felt one strong arm steady her shoulders, then the world blurred at the edges. Easy, he said, his voice close but controlled. Tessa tried to answer. Nothing came. The last thing she saw was his face above hers, no longer guarded, no longer distant. He looked frightened for her. Then darkness took her. Across the room, Evelyn turned toward the medicine tray to retrieve the amber vial for testing. Her hand stopped over the empty silver plate. The vial was gone. Tessa woke to the soft hum of a moon lamp and the strange feeling that someone had been sitting beside her for a long time. For a moment, she did not know where she was. Then the memory returned. The northern room, the poison patient, the gold in his eyes, the pain that had rushed through her body when she tried to calm his wolf. She lifted her wrist. The dark resonance mark had faded to a thin gray shadow. You should not move too quickly. His voice came from near the window. Tessa turned her head. The stranger sat in a chair with one arm resting loosely against his side. He looked better, still pale, but awake, steady, very much alive. How long was I unconscious? She asked. A few hours, and you still difficult. Tessa sat up slowly. Good, that means you are improving. His eyes narrowed with something close to amusement. You nearly collapsed keeping me stable. And that is your assessment? It is the one that matters. For a few seconds, neither spoke. Morning light pressed faintly against the high windows. Tessa noticed that the room had been cleared. No senior healers, no guards, no medicine tray. Only the stranger, watching her with an intensity that made her more curious than afraid. "Why did you do it?" he asked. "Do what, Stay?" Tessa looked down at her hands. "Because you needed a healer. You did not know my name." Pain does not become more important because of a name. That answer silenced him. Something in his face softened, then disappeared behind the same careful control he had worn all night. Before Tessa could ask the question that had been circling her thoughts, the door opened. Evelyn Ward stood there. Her expression was formal now, almost unreadable. "You are expected in the council chamber." Tessa's stomach tightened. "For what, your actions last night?" The answer was enough. 10 minutes later, Tessa crossed the central hall with Evelyn beside her. Every healer they passed seemed to know something she did not. Whispers followed her, some curious, some disapproving. She kept her shoulders straight. Inside the council chamber, Captain Mason Reed stood near the far wall. 3 senior healers sat behind a long oak table. Tessa remained standing in the center. Evelyn opened the hearing. "Healer Monroe, were you informed that one patient was under restricted protection?" "Yes." "Were you instructed not to touch that patient?" "Yes." A murmur moved through the room. Tessa continued before anyone could interrupt. "I asked which patient." "I was never told." Silence followed. Evelyn's jaw tightened. She knew it was true. "And when you entered room N3, there was no name on the door. No warning marker, no guard, only an emergency bell and a patient whose condition was failing." One of the senior healers frowned. "Yet you continued after learning he was restricted." Tessa met his gaze. "Because stopping would have put him at greater risk." The chamber doors opened behind her. Every person in the room rose at once. Mason went down on one knee. So did the guards near the entrance. Evelyn bowed her head. Tessa turned. The man she had treated walked into the chamber wearing black instead of hospital gray. A silver wolf crest rested over his chest. A dark royal cloak fell from his shoulders. Tessa forgot how to breathe. Alpha King Cole Whitaker, the most powerful wolf in the Northern Kingdom. The patient she had ordered to breathe slowly. The man she had told to stop being difficult. Everyone in the chamber remained bowed. Everyone except Tessa. She was too stunned to move. Cole stopped in front of her. "You may remain standing." Tessa swallowed. I seemed to be unusually good at that today. For the first time, she saw a real smile touch his face. Small, brief, but unmistakable. Then Mason stepped close and spoke quietly into Cole's ear. The smile vanished. Cole turned toward the council table. "Say it aloud." Mason's expression hardened. "The preliminary tests are complete. The silver nightshade did not enter His Majesty's system only during the attack." Tessa felt cold spread through her chest. Mason continued. "A second exposure occurred after he arrived here." The room went still. Evelyn looked toward the empty space where the missing vial had once been. Cole's silver-gray eyes moved across every healer in the chamber. "Seal the infirmary," he said. "No one leaves." Tessa suddenly understood why the medicine had smelled wrong, why his condition had worsened after treatment, and why the vial had vanished before anyone could test it. Someone inside the Royal Moon Infirmary had tried to keep the Alpha King from recovering. The infirmary changed the moment Cole ordered the doors sealed. Guards took position at every entrance. Staff were instructed to remain in assigned wards. Medicine cabinets were locked. Records were collected, and no treatment moved from one room to another without being logged. Tessa stood near the council chamber doorway while Mason issued orders in a calm voice that somehow made the situation feel more serious. Someone inside the building had reached the king after he arrived. That meant the danger had not ended with the attack. It had followed him here. Cole turned to Evelyn. I want every medication batch checked. Of course, Your Majesty, and every person with access to them. His eyes shifted toward Tessa for only a moment. Everyone. Tessa understood what that meant. Saving him did not place her above suspicion. In some ways, it made her more visible. By late afternoon, she had been assigned to assist with the review because she was the only healer who had noticed something unusual about the missing antidote. Nolan Price joined them in the apothecary corridor. He was calm, neatly dressed, and almost reassuring compared with the tension around him. Healer Monroe, he said, offering a polite nod. Quite an introduction to royal service. Tessa managed a tired smile. I was hoping my first day would be quieter. Nolan gave a soft laugh. Most people do. For the next hour, Tessa checked labeled bottles while Evelyn compared batch numbers against the medication ledger. Mason watched from the doorway. Cole remained under guarded observation in the northern wing, stable but not yet recovered enough to leave. When Tessa opened one bottle of standard antidote, the smell was clean, herbal, nothing like the sharp metallic note from the dose used on Cole. This batch is normal, she said. Evelyn marked the page. Then the contamination may have happened after preparation. Or the vial was switched. Evelyn looked at her. Possible. It was the first time all day she had answered Tessa without dismissing her. The moment did not last. A guard entered carrying a small sealed pouch. Captain? Mason turned. We found this during the staff locker search. Tessa saw her own name written on the attached tag. Her stomach dropped. Mason opened the pouch on the examination table. Inside was a narrow vial containing dark concentrate. Evelyn went still. Nolan leaned closer, but did not touch it. Moonbane, he said quietly. Tessa stared at the vial. That was not in my locker. No one answered immediately. Mason opened the medication ledger. There is more. He placed one page in front of her. A withdrawal entry showed Moonbane concentrate removed from controlled storage earlier that afternoon. Beside it was a signature. Tessa Monroe. Her own name. Her handwriting was almost right. Almost. She looked up. I did not sign this. Evelyn's expression hardened. The vial was in your locker. I know what it looks like. Then explain it. Tessa forced herself to breathe. Anger would only make her look defensive. My locker key never left my pocket, and that signature is wrong. Nolan studied the page. It is a convincing copy. Tessa turned toward him. Copy? He paused. If you did not write it, then that is what it would be. Mason closed the ledger. Until this is resolved, Healer Monroe will remain under guard. Cole entered the corridor before anyone could respond. He moved more slowly than usual, but there was nothing weak in his expression. His gaze fell on the vial, then on Tessa. Is there evidence she administered it? Mason answered first. No, Your Majesty. Then she is not convicted. Evelyn lowered her eyes. But she is a suspect. Then investigate her as one. Cole's voice stayed even. Do not punish her as if the investigation is already finished. Tessa looked at him. He was not declaring her innocent. He was doing something harder. He was refusing to let power replace proof. Mason assigned a guard to remain near her while the search continued. Tessa stepped back from the table, trying to understand how someone had entered her locker and copied her signature on her first day. Then she noticed Nolan rubbing 2 fingers against the edge of his sleeve. The skin near his fingertips was darkened. Not bruised, burned. A thin, gray-violet stain marked the edges. Tessa had seen something similar during training. Concentrated moonbane could irritate exposed skin within minutes. Nolan realized she was looking. His hand disappeared into his coat. Their eyes met. His polite expression did not change. Tessa said nothing. Not yet. A burn was not proof. But for the first time since the lockdown began, She knew exactly where Mason needed to look next. Tessa waited until Nolan turned back toward the medicine shelves before she moved. She did not accuse him. A burn was not proof, and she knew what happened when suspicion outran evidence. Instead, she crossed the corridor to Captain Mason and kept her voice low. "I need you to check something." Mason looked at her once, then followed her gaze toward Nolan. What? His right hand. 2 fingertips. Gray-violet irritation. Mason's expression did not change. "Moonbane can cause that. It can also come from other compounds. I am not saying he did anything. I am saying you should look." Mason gave one short nod. "Stay here." He disappeared into the records room with a guard. Tessa remained beside the apothecary table, trying not to watch Nolan too closely. He moved with the same calm precision as before, arranging bottles, checking seals, speaking softly to Evelyn. Nothing about him looked guilty. That made Tessa more uneasy, not less. Several minutes passed. Then the emergency bell from the northern wing rang. Once. Twice. Mason came out of the records room at the same moment Evelyn turned toward the sound. A guard rushed down the corridor. His Majesty is deteriorating. Everyone moved. Tessa followed before anyone could stop her. Cole was sitting upright when they entered room N3, but his face had gone pale again. His breathing was controlled only by effort. The dark lines beneath his skin had returned. Nolan arrived behind them carrying a fresh dose in a glass cup. "This was prepared from a sealed batch," he said. "It should stabilize him." Tessa smelled it before he reached the bed. Bitter herbs, silver root, and beneath them, that same metallic sharpness from the first vial. Her stomach tightened. "Do not give him that." Nolan stopped. Evelyn turned sharply. "Tessa, it smells wrong." Nolan's calm expression finally shifted. "She is under investigation for possessing Moonbane." "Then test it," Tessa said. "If I am wrong..." "You lose 30 seconds. Cole reached for the cup. Tessa stepped forward and caught his wrist before he drank. The room went silent. Cole looked at her. There was no anger in his eyes, only a question. "You are certain? Certain enough to ask you not to gamble your life?" Nolan exhaled through his nose. "Your Majesty, every delay increases the risk." Tessa looked toward the side table. A silver assay plate still rested there, identical to the one she had used the night before. "Put 1 drop on the plate." Evelyn took the cup from Nolan. Her hands were steady, but her face was not. She tipped a single drop onto the silver surface. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then a violet gray ring formed around the liquid. Mason's eyes hardened. "Seal the room." Nolan took 1 step backward. A guard quietly blocked the doorway. "There is an explanation," Nolan said. "Then give it," Cole replied. Mason placed a folded access record on the table. "We checked the lock history." Healer Monroe's locker was opened with a master apothecary key before the search. Nolan said nothing. Mason continued. "There are only 2 master keys in service. One is secured in the records office. The other is assigned to you." Tessa saw the careful mask disappear from Nolan's face. Not dramatically, just enough. The inventory loss began before she was hired. Mason added, "Moonbane was missing from controlled stock 3 days before her first shift." Evelyn closed her eyes briefly. Tessa felt the tension leave her chest, but only for a second. Cole suddenly gripped the edge of the bed. His breathing faltered. The poison already in his system was surging again. Nolan's contaminated dose had not reached him, but the earlier exposure was enough. His eyes flashed gold. Mason moved toward him. Cole raised one hand. No restraints. His voice was strained. Then his gaze found Tessa. "Stay back." She knew why. This time, she knew exactly who he was. The Alpha King. The strongest wolf in the kingdom. A man whose body was losing its fight against a poison designed to turn his own instincts against him. Tessa stepped closer anyway. The first time, I did not know you were my king. Cole's jaw tightened as another wave of pain moved through him. Tessa placed her hand over his wrist. This time I do. His eyes locked onto hers. It changes nothing. She opened herself to the resonance. Pain rushed through her nerves, fierce and immediate, but she stayed with it. Not fighting his wolf, not commanding it, just giving it somewhere safe to settle. Cole followed her breathing. One breath, then another. The gold in his eyes began to fade. Behind her, Mason ordered Nolan taken into custody for formal questioning. Tessa barely heard him. She was watching Cole's pulse steady beneath her fingers. For the second time in less than 2 days, the king survived because the Omega everyone had doubted noticed what everyone else had missed. And now, for the first time, the truth had somewhere to lead. By morning, the Royal Moon Infirmary no longer felt like a place holding its breath. It felt like a place waiting for judgment. Tessa stood in the council chamber with her hands folded in front of her, the faint resonance marks on her wrist almost gone. Across the room, Evelyn Ward stood beside the senior healers. Mason Reed held a sealed stack of records. Cole sat at the head of the chamber, pale but steady, his silver-gray eyes clear again. Nolan Price was not present. He remained under guard while the investigation continued. Mason broke the silence first. The inventory audit is complete. Tessa felt every muscle in her shoulders tighten. Mason placed the first ledger on the table. Moonbane concentrate disappeared from controlled storage 3 days before Healer Monroe began working here. A quiet murmur moved through the room. Mason opened another record. Her locker was accessed with the master apothecary key. Her personal key was never used during the time the vial was planted. Evelyn looked toward Tessa. The certainty she had carried the day before was gone, Mason continued. The signature attributed to Healer Monroe was copied from her employment documents. The pressure pattern and letter spacing do not match her normal writing. Tessa let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. Then Mason placed one final page before Cole. Nolan Price also had direct control over the antidote batches administered after His Majesty arrived. During questioning, he admitted altering the medication after learning the royal audit of the apothecary stores would expose years of missing supplies. The chamber went still. Cole did not react immediately. So he used my condition to hide his theft? Yes, Your Majesty. And when Tessa noticed the treatment was wrong, she became the easiest person to blame. Tessa looked down for a moment. An Omega, new, unknown, no allies. Nolan had not chosen her because she was dangerous. He had chosen her because he believed nobody would defend her. Cole turned toward the council. Then let the record show that healer Tessa Monroe is cleared of every accusation. No applause followed. Somehow, the silence meant more. The same people who had watched her as a suspect now had to look at her as the healer who had seen what they had missed. Evelyn stepped forward. There is another matter. Tessa raised her eyes. Evelyn's voice was quieter than usual. I failed to complete your security briefing. I dismissed your observations because of your rank, and when evidence appeared against you, I allowed that prejudice to influence my judgment. Nobody moved. Evelyn faced her directly. I was wrong. Tessa had imagined hearing those words from people like Evelyn for years. She had expected satisfaction. Instead, she felt tired. Do not punish yourself for insulting me, Tessa said. Fix the system that made it easy to ignore me. Evelyn's expression shifted. Tessa continued. If another Omega sees something important tomorrow, I want someone to listen before a patient has to nearly die for her to be taken seriously. Cole leaned back slightly, watching her. Not as a king evaluating a subject, as a man discovering something. By afternoon, the Royal Healing Circle voted to admit Tessa into its advanced training program. Not as a favor, not as a ceremonial reward, Her medical decisions from the previous 2 nights were reviewed one by one. Every choice had a reason. Every intervention had a result. When the decision was announced, Tessa stared at the small, silver healer insignia Evelyn placed in her palm. For years, she had imagined proving that an Omega could stand among the best healers in the kingdom. She had never imagined doing it like this. Later, she found Cole alone near the northern corridor window. He was no longer confined to bed, though Mason had made it clear he was not allowed to leave the infirmary yet. "You should be resting," Tessa said. Cole looked at her. "You sound very comfortable giving me orders again. You keep giving me reasons." A quiet smile touched his face. Then it faded. "There is something I have not told you." Tessa waited. Cole looked toward the window, then back at her. "My wolf recognized something the first night you touched me." Her heartbeat changed. He noticed. Of course he did. What she asked, Cole took one step closer, but stopped with enough distance between them that the choice remained hers. "Possibility," he said. "A bond." Tessa said nothing. "I will not name it for you," he continued, "and I will not claim anything you have not chosen." For the first time since arriving at the infirmary, Tessa forgot about rank, accusations, poison, and protocol. There was only the man she had first met without a name. Cole held her gaze. "When all of this is over, Tessa Monroe, I would like to know whether you would still choose to stay." 4 months later, winter had settled over the Northern Kingdom in a clean white silence. The Royal Moon Infirmary looked almost the same from the outside, but inside, everything had changed. Omega apprentices now trained beside alphas and betas. New security procedures required every restricted patient to be identified clearly to authorized healers. Medication access was logged twice. No apprentice was dismissed simply because of rank. Tessa Monroe had earned her place in the advanced healing program the slow way. She studied. She passed every evaluation. She worked long shifts. She made mistakes small enough to learn from and choices strong enough to earn trust. By the beginning of winter, nobody introduced her as the Omega who had saved the king. They introduced her as Healer Monroe. That mattered more than she expected. Cole had recovered fully weeks earlier, though he still appeared at the infirmary more often than any healthy king reasonably should. Sometimes he claimed he was checking on reforms. Sometimes he brought reports for Evelyn. Once, he arrived carrying 2 cups of hot cider and insisted it was a matter of royal importance that Tessa remember to eat lunch. She had stopped believing his excuses by the 3rd visit. What she did believe was the patience behind them. Cole never mentioned the bond again unless she did. He never used his rank to move her closer to the palace. He gave her exactly what he had promised in that northern corridor: a choice. On a night of the winter moon ceremony, hundreds gathered beneath silver lanterns in the courtyard of the royal citadel. Snow rested along the stone walls. Music drifted softly through the cold air. Tessa stood among the healers wearing the silver insignia she had earned. Not borrowed, not gifted. Earned. When Cole stepped onto the raised platform, the courtyard fell quiet. He wore the black royal coat and silver wolf crest she now recognized instantly. Months earlier, seeing those symbols had made her forget how to breathe. Tonight, she only saw the man beneath them. Cole spoke briefly about the kingdom, the reforms, and the people who had kept it standing when fear might have broken it. Then his gaze found Tessa. Her wolf stirred inside her. Warm, certain, the same quiet recognition she had felt in fragments since that first night now settled into something clear. Cole descended the steps. The crowd parted for him. He stopped in front of Tessa. No command entered his voice. No royal authority filled the space between them. "I asked you once whether you would stay when all of this was over." Tessa smiled. "You did. I have a different question now." Cole held out his hand, but did not touch her. "Will you choose me?" Tessa looked at the man who had first entered her life without a name. She remembered the dark room, the emergency bell, his uneven breathing, the warning in his eyes when he told her to leave. She remembered how easy it would have been to obey fear instead of compassion. Then she placed her hand in his. Yes, the bond did not strike like lightning. It unfolded like warmth after a long winter. Quiet, steady, mutual. Cole closed his fingers around hers, and for the first time, Tessa felt no difference between the king and the patient she had once refused to abandon. Months later, she still worked at the infirmary. Becoming Cole's chosen mate did not erase the life she had built. One morning, a young Omega apprentice hurried toward her with a worried expression. "Healer Monroe, there is a restricted patient arriving. Which room should I avoid?" Tessa stopped. For a moment, she was back on her first night, standing beneath cold moon lamps with an unanswered question and a medical satchel clutched against her side. Then she smiled. None of them. The apprentice blinked. Tessa handed her a clean chart. "Restrictions tell us how to enter a room. They do not tell us whose pain matters." From the far end of the corridor, Cole leaned against the doorway, healthy and entirely too pleased with himself. "I heard this infirmary has the best healer in the kingdom." Tessa raised an eyebrow. "Your Majesty, you are not sick. I may require a professional opinion." "You require a hobby," Cole laughed, and the sound followed her down the corridor as she returned to work. Tessa had spent years believing strength belonged to the loudest voice, the highest rank, or the most powerful wolf. She knew better now. Sometimes strength was quieter. Sometimes it looked like staying when everyone else stepped away. Sometimes it was giving another person the freedom to choose, and sometimes the smallest act of kindness opened a door that changed two lives forever.